for Polly and others for the last 7 years or so. One of the first clinical entrepreneurs appointed to the programme, now mentor on it. Done a variety of roles in different digital health startups in that time. At the moment, I'm working as a director of health and innovation for a company called AirLogic, which is, I think, the largest specialist healthcare technology company consultancy in the UK, and we do lots of the big national programs like electronic prescribing and COVID vaccination and flu vaccination service. That's our guys who are building that software, and I lead their operations team. And yeah, going to be talking to you about some Lean Canvas stuff, but I'll hand back over to Tamsin for the rest of the housekeeping and stuff.
Thanks, Harry. And you've probably heard Harry mention that he is a mentor. And so we really benefit from having very high quality mentors. But the wonderful thing has been around how people who have been super successful and really have trodden that journey come back and mentor for other people. And that's been hugely successful. So a very quick run through, because you definitely want to get to Harry's bit, which is that's obviously the programme is open to everyone now in the NHS. So it started just for doctors, and now it's open to anyone who touches the NHS, and it's becoming really wide because of that, which is great. There are when the programme is sort of supporting three different parts, which is your idea and your innovation, but also building your skills around that and business. And also there is a personal development part of that, including kind of coaching and leadership. And also there's a mental health component to that, because of just the process is a tough process. And there's always a check-in because of that. Entrepreneurs are slightly more likely to be at risk of burnout, and the NHS are pretty high anyway. So there are three different parts of the programme, and there's three different prongs where you are supported on that programme. It is a year-long programme, but the alumni never leave. So everybody is still mates, and there's little groups, aren't there, Harry? Like I think I got adopted into the Liverpool football group because I went to one match, which was great, and it's a lovely group. But the other thing is that on the website, the CEP Clinical Entrepreneur Programme website, there's lots of support materials if you haven't already seen them. So definitely worth checking that about what we're expecting when we're looking at applications. And then by magic, the link to the application to the programme will start on the 2nd of October. Oh, I love that. Get in there with the questions early. Quite right. How many people are we going to let on? Now, the thing is you'd think that there was just a definite number, but Polly, I mean, yeah, Polly, go and tell us what happens. So the problem is, yeah, carry on, Polly.
So we don't really have a limit. It usually converts to about 40%, generally every year, of applicants, but it increases every year, and we don't have a limit because we always take just the real high quality applications and those that have legs and that are going places. So last year we accepted, the first year we had 100, the cohort that Harry was part of, 103, and every year it's increased by about 20 or 30. This year was our biggest year with 195, but last year was pretty big as well. It was about 190, but we had over 400 applications last year. So it sort of converts to about, every year it looks about 40%. And that's not, there's no planning in that. That's sort of anecdotal evidence that we gather as a team.
So if there is, if you're really good, then you get squeezed on, and that's how it operates at the moment. There is you will go through, Harry's got this really helpful, which, so I should have said, sorry, that like Harry, I started as a clinical entrepreneur early on the programme, not as early as Harry, but I had my own innovation and idea and then went through the programme, and then later you'll see that there are many opportunities that arrive from being on the programme. in many different forms, not just through the programme, but through mentors and also the people you meet networking. And so one of the things that was on offer was some of the clinical entrepreneurs stepping up into certain roles. And so one of the roles that I've taken for the last couple of years has been co-clinical lead. So Harry will run you through a really helpful framework, but the essential bits that people are looking for are for you to have a really clear why this is needed, why your innovation is needed. And I think a lot of those applications, am I right, Polly, are kind of focused around the fact that you just need to have researched that idea particularly well. That doesn't, now some of them are very early stage, so you can be very early stage, but you need to have done then that background research, that literature review type of thing. So Polly, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, just so this year, some more evidence from the programme, 40% of applicants that were accepted had really early stage ideas. So if you have a really early stage idea, it's just useful for us to understand how much you know about that idea, and if you know, understand about the landscape, your competitors, what's being done already in the space, how you think it's going to work. So a lot of people have sort of some quite large, big ideas, which is fine, but it's like we also need to understand how you plan to execute on that, which is probably not the right word, but the steps you are going to take to make that idea happen. Harry probably can help with explaining a bit more too.
Sure, if I can find the mute button. Yeah, so I think, I guess my take on it is, can you think like an entrepreneur, right? So having an idea is great, doing that initial research is great, but then can you think holistically about everything that it's going to take in order to bring that idea from where it is now, right? When you haven't built anything, or even if you've started to build something, through to being a massive success. And that can be a commercial success. It could mean that it's a not-for-profit enterprise which is benefiting thousands or millions of patients, whatever it is. But how do you go from where you are now to there? And can you think through that process and the things which you're going to need to address, and the questions you're going to need to answer in order to get that far? So it's not saying that you have to come and say, yeah, we've got built this amazing solution and it's just about to go to market and we've done all of this work already. That's not the point. The point is, can you think holistically, and can you think critically, and can you have a strong rationale and explanation about how you're going to approach the kind of next steps that you're going to have to take. So it's a little bit of a shift away from what you might learn in medical school or in the day job, and hopefully that's where this session will come in handy, because it gives you a framework and an approach which you can use to think about your idea more holistically. I think that's really what we're going to try and do.
Thank you, Harry. That's amazing. The other thing that might be helpful to mention is that there are some amazing innovators who have come through the Clinical Entrepreneur Programme, and it's really easy to feel a little bit overwhelmed by how brilliant everyone is. But everybody, there's a little bit of imposter syndrome that roams a little bit, and so don't feel that overwhelmed with that. I remember feeling that a little bit myself. I felt like everybody else was maybe further ahead or doing more stuff, and actually you're probably further ahead than you think, and it's worth taking the risk to jump into that space, because you might have quite a small idea, but the network and your mentors and you're building your business skills might mean that you are really able to grow that enormously and think much bigger than you were thinking. At the same time, some people are very entrepreneurial, so they are wanting to change a process or a pathway or perhaps a device within their hospital setting. And some people have more of a social enterprise, where it's much more about that social value piece and putting the money back in. And so all of those are accommodated. So just don't feel overwhelmed by, because as you go along some of these prep sessions, you will hear some people's stories, and you might connect with different entrepreneurs. And there's a huge value, and a lot of people have put in their what they felt was a small innovation that has done incredibly well. So it's worth taking the risk. You are very welcome to ask any of us questions or connect or whatever you need. We're really keen to support applications. The team will be at the HETT conference, HETT conference, and so and that will be in the Academic Health Science Network, the AHSN Innovation Zone. So if you're there, then definitely come and say hi and introduce yourself, because we love meeting all of you. So that'd be great. And I think that was Lucy's list for me. So there was a few members of the team who aren't here, but you will meet over time, and who are on the operational side or delivery side. Harry, thank you. I love doing your lean canvas. So I really appreciate going through it again.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tamsin. So let me try and share my screen. And apologies, I'm working, as I was telling Polly and Tamsin, I'm in an Airbnb with all sorts of limbo going on. So I've only got one screen. So you're going to have to bear with me as I try and make this work. And if I go into slideshow, there we go. Can you guys see that okay? Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, the Lean Canvas workshop, I've already done my intro, so I won't waste any more time on that. We'll try and just get stuck straight in. So to break this down, I'm going to start off talking a little bit about Lean Startup, where that come from, what the kind of general principles of that are. And hopefully, as I say, that starts to get you thinking about your idea, your concept, or if you're a bit further along, your solution, and think about it more kind of holistically. So we'll go over some of the basics first, but we won't waste too much time on that, because the main meat of the session is getting into the Lean Canvas itself. And this Lean Canvas is basically a one-page business plan, which gets you to, as I say, think really holistically about everything that's going to go into making your idea successful, and also offers you a bit of a guide as to what your next steps should be. And sometimes it feels a little bit intense, but we're going to each try and write our own Lean Canvas. So we'll go through each of the sections, spend 2 minutes on each one. Hopefully, I don't know, Polly, if you want to send out the template. If you don't have the template, that's fine. Blank sheet of paper and a pencil is absolutely fine, but you get something to scribble with, because it's going to help. And then I think we're probably going to be a bit short on time, so sometimes we do breakout rooms to present it back, but I think we'll probably just have a bit of a Q&A at the end to go over any questions. So, Lean Startup, what is it? So hopefully a lot of you will have heard of Lean as a principle, and it started off in manufacturing and with Toyota. And they, at the time, were really struggling and really losing out to these big American companies like General Motors and Ford and so on, and were on the verge of bankruptcy. So they basically looked at everything that they were doing and tried to make it as efficient as possible. So how can you cut waste out of a process so you can deliver quickly, on time, with zero or as near to zero waste as you can get within a process? So it's all about becoming more efficient and producing higher quality goods more quickly. So that's where it originated. Then a guy called Eric Ries took those principles and tried to apply them to a startup in what I think is probably now, you can call it a seminal book, and something that I'd recommend anyone with an entrepreneurial bent or bone in their body to read, which is The Lean Startup. So when he was thinking about waste in the context of a startup, what is waste? Waste is building anything that people don't want, or spending time on anything which isn't taking your idea a step forwards. So he divides this essentially set of principles that we're going to talk about in more detail as a way to focus your time and attention and very precious resources and money on the things that really matter. And it's kind of a quasi-scientific method of doing that. So it gives you quite a nice, to me as a clinician, like that kind of step by step, this happens and then this happens and then this happens. It gives you a nice approach to follow. And the final book I'm going to mention, which I'd also recommend, is Running Lean by Ash Boyra. So Lean Startup is quite theoretical, quite high level, and quite software focused. Running Lean takes those principles and gives you a real play-by-play. Do this first, and then do that, and then do this. Right? And it's a really nice, easy to follow guide. And Ash Boyra was actually the guy who developed the Lean Canvas based on the business model canvas, which was kind of a previous iteration. So yeah, two absolute must-read books in my opinion. I think it's got enormous value to anyone who's interested in the entrepreneurial space. So these are the principles of the Lean Startup. So starting at the top left, you've got to have a laser focus on your customer problem, right? I think in health tech, I often see people who've got this amazing solution. Now all we need is a problem to solve with it, right? And you do it back to front. If you're not solving a must-have massive problem for someone, the chances of you being successful diminish significantly, right? So laser focus on the customer problem and really understanding that customer problem. Then thinking, okay, well, maybe we could solve it like this, right? Designing, thinking about your solution. But then the next step is to get it into this business model, which is our Lean Canvas. So the idea is this, we'll go into it in more detail, but this breaks apart all the different components. So you think about the problem, you think about your customers, you think about your solution, but then also how are we going to find customers? How are we going to tell people about this? What are our costs going to be? How are we going to make money or get funding, grant funding, whatever it might be. So it looks at all of these various different components. So you get all of that out onto a page. And then this is where that kind of bit of a scientific method comes out. Look at what you've written down and try and identify where are your biggest assumptions, right? Where are your biggest risks? Where are your biggest unknowns that if you're wrong about them, are going to torpedo your entire model and your chances of success, right? So pick those. And then the idea is that you essentially write a hypothesis. So if I build an app which does X, it's going to solve this problem for these people, right? You can write that out as a hypothesis, which you can then go and try and prove or disprove. So then what you need to do is to build a minimum viable product, which is not a crappy version of your product. Instead, it's the simplest thing that you can build, which allows you to validate or refute that hypothesis, right? The simplest thing that you can do to show whether your assumption is right or wrong. So build your MVP, get out of the building, go and talk to customers, go and talk to end users, and understand their feedback, get the learning from that little mini experiment you've done, and then come right back again to your business model, update it, that new learning. Now, are you heading the right way, but you're not quite there yet? Great. Go around that circle again, build something else, test it, bring back the learning. If it's completely wrong and you completely disproven what you thought was your idea, then go back to the drawing board, find another problem that you want to solve or another aspect of the problem that you can solve, and then start again. If it's absolutely perfect and you're really solving the problem and people are biting your hand off to get involved with it, then maybe you're ready to go to market. And then hopefully we get this lovely hockey stick shaped curve, easy for me to say, where you get this kind of exponential growth and everything's great. But where we're going to focus today is on the business model and then this kind of build, measure, learn loop. We're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail. And we'll come back and we'll have another look at this slide. But I just wanted to give you that kind of overview. This is how it all fits together. And this is why the Lean Canvas is really important, because it allows you to see where your biggest risks are, and then therefore what should you be spending your time and effort on. There we go. So this is what it looks like. This is the Lean Canvas. So I would say single page. It's not the the 1980s where you need to write a 80-page business plan with all sorts of projections, which are definitely wrong every time. That's not what this is about. This is about being lean, it's about being agile, it's about doing this really quickly, getting all of the various different bits of your business model out onto a page, and then you can start updating it. You can start talking to other people about it. You can start bringing people on that journey so they can understand what you're trying to achieve. So I'll talk through a couple of these sections. Then we've got some tips on completing it, and then we're going to get stuck in and try and complete them together. So the problem, top 3 problems, the main thing, it has to be a must-have problem, right? It has to be something that people simply have to solve. If it's a nice-to-have problem, the getting buy-in and getting people to engage with whatever it is that you're doing, you know, the app you're building, the medical device that you're planning, whatever it is, it's going to be much harder if it's not a must-have problem. Another really good thing to put into the problem bit is existing alternatives, because if it is a must-solve problem, then people will be solving it in some way already. So is that like, you know, are they scribbling down things on bits of paper? Are they got 4 different systems which they're entering different bits of information on? How are they solving it already? Good thing to think of. Customer segments, I think, is one of the most important, and particularly within medtech, one of the most challenging. So what is a customer? A customer is someone who pays for your product. And there's a big difference in healthcare often between customers and users. So user is someone who uses your product. But if I'm building, so my innovation when I came onto the entrepreneur program was an app to help people get ready for surgery, to do rehabilitation. The users were patients, but I wasn't asking the patients to pay for it. I was asking a hospital trust, for example, to pay. So then you need to start thinking, okay, well, we've got our customers and we've got our users. What problems do those groups of people have? Because they're often not the same. So maybe the hospital's worried about efficiencies and I don't know, people who don't attend appointments, whereas patients might be anxious about their operation and you know, desperate to get back to work quickly. Who knows? But you can see then you start to have a very different approach to the whole rest of your canvas. And if you're going to be successful, thinking about both your customers and your users, I think, is really really important. Some of the other boxes on here, your unique value proposition in the middle. I can't see if that's what it even says. I'm guessing it is. I can't see it on my screen share. But the box in the middle, number 3. Imagine you've got someone landing on a web page. You've got 8 seconds on average to grab their attention before they leave the page. Why should they care? Why should they stay on that page and actually listen? That 1 sentence punchy tagline, which allows people to really understand what you do and why is it important to them. The solution box, number 4, is intentionally the smallest box on the lean canvas. Now, as entrepreneurs, we all get really excited about all of the amazing bells and whistles and gizmos and widgets and things that we can build. But actually, just the top 3 things, laser focus, what are the 3 things within your solution that are going to solve those problems, right? Nothing else. Keep it really, really narrow and focused. Some of the other ones I always whiz through quickly. Channels, how are you going to tell people, how people are going to find out about you? And again, this is applicable for commercial enterprises, but it's also applicable for you know, social enterprises, not-for-profits. If you have the most amazing charity offering in the world, but no one knows about it, then no one's going to use it. Right? So how are you going to get out there? How are you going to tell people? That could be things like email marketing. That could be going out and knocking on people's doors, picking up the phone. It could be social media. There's all sorts of stuff that you could put in there. Bottom 2, around costs and revenue streams. Often, if you are at a really early stage with your idea, these could be really challenging boxes to fill out. I would, to make it easier, focus on your next step. So we've talked about this concept of building an MVP and then testing it. How much is it going to cost you to get from where you are now to have a functioning MVP? And how are you going to fund that? Are you going to fund it yourself? Are you going to go for some grant funding? Are you going to get some seed investment? So narrowing the scope of that to the immediate future could be really helpful. And then final 2, key metrics. what are the absolute key numbers that tell you if you're heading in the right direction? Be really careful of vanity metrics. So if you've got a website and you're getting 100,000 unique visitors every day, but only one of those people is actually buying your product, then your 100,000 visitors isn't your key metric. What's your conversion rate? That would be the key metric. So often, again, early stage, is the thing that you're trying to build solving the problem? And how do you tell if it is solving that problem? So often you can focus that in on that kind of problem customer bit and think of numbers around that, which will tell you if you're heading the right way. And the final one is unfair advantage. Really tricky. Again, often people start thinking about patents or trademarks or copyright. Particularly software is extremely hard to protect. So starting early to think about what your unfair advantage could be the Clinical Entrepreneur Programme. If you're successful in the network that comes with that, it could be getting an absolute kick-ass advisory board together with the professor who is the best in the world in his particular niche. It could be, that you're doing something in a way that others can't or just aren't doing yet. But I'm thinking about what stops Google or Apple or name another massive tech corporation coming in and do what you do, but doing it a lot better. You need to think about that really carefully. I would say particularly, when you're coming onto the program and when you're at an early stage, the top 1, 2, 3, 4, possibly 5 boxes here. So problem, customers, channels, solution, and your unique value proposition. If you could absolutely nail those, I think it would really help with really strong application. Okay, so I appreciate that's probably quite a lot of information in a short space of time, but hopefully you've got a feel and a flavour for what the Lean Canvas is, why it's important, what it's about. So tips, first thing is that it should be quick. This is not something that you should be sitting down and spending 4 hours going through each box and researching and trying to get perfect Shakespearean English into every thing that you're writing. It's about getting down the key points really quickly, do it in less than 30 minutes. And really, the job of the Lean Canvas is to tell you what questions you should be asking, not to give you all of the answers. So if you come to a box and you're just like, I have no idea about any of this, move on. But that might tell you where your biggest risk is. Because if you have absolutely no idea who your customer is, for example, you know who your user is, but you can't think who's going to pay for it, then maybe that's your biggest challenge, and maybe where you need to start thinking about trying to validate. Customers versus users, I've talked about, really important to get that balance. One other thing, maybe to add into that as well, is think about your early adopters. So your customers, maybe you're going to say, oh, well, doctors are my customers, but what type of doctors? And out of that type of doctors, so it's radiologists, what specific type of radiologists? So maybe it's interventional radiologists who work at these 3 hospitals, because I've got contacts in there. They're going to be the first people that I know from my personal network, so I'm going to go and try and approach them. Right. So thinking your early adopters can be really helpful. Present it to someone. I see a lot, and I was like this as well when I first joined the program, terrified about talking about their idea. I'm worried that people are just going to run off and steal it and steal all of your brilliant ideas. In general, I mean, if you've got a proprietary, very special algorithm in AI or something, which don't be emailing it to everyone, but talking about the principles, talking about the idea, getting feedback, going and speaking to your customers, going and speak to your users, going and speaking to other people within the Clinical Entrepreneur Programme is absolutely key, because they will have insight and they will think of things that you just haven't have. So get in the habit, every time you complete one, go off and present it to someone and get comfortable in doing that. And finally, it's an iterative process, right? The idea is not you do a Lean Canvas, then it's done, and then you forget about it and never look at it again. If you're doing this right and you're doing it successfully, you should be coming back to it each time you have a bit of learning, and doing another one. when I did my prehab app, I had probably 2-3 dozen canvases which I filled in, looking at like different aspects. I might do one which was looking at it from purely a patient perspective. I might do another which is looking at it for orthopedic surgeons. I might do another one looking at it from a different perspective. And then when you start going out and talking to these people and trying basic concepts, you can come back and update it and input all of your learnings into it. Okay, so I think you have probably all had enough of me speaking. What we're going to try and do now, if I can get the Zoom thing out of the way, there we go, is we are going to do 2 minutes each. And we're going to complete sections of the Lean Canvas. If you bear with me 1 second, I'll just share my whole screen instead of a window. There we go. So we're going to start off with the problem section. So I hope you're ready. Everyone's got a pencil and a bit of paper, so to scribble down. And we're going to start now. 2 minutes. What are the top 3 problems that you're trying to solve? Must-have problems that you're really passionate about, which you would love to solve. See everyone studiously writing 1 or 2, maybe not. If you get the end, you're thinking, think about the existing alternatives. How are people solving this problem already? And if they're not, maybe have you got the right problem? Is it a must-have problem which you're talking about? Great. About 30 seconds more. Okay, finish that thought. There's no respite on this. So we start straight into customer segments. So who are your target customers? Remember, customer is someone who pays for your product. User is somebody who actually uses this service or product that you're building. You might want to have some little subheadings there. The more detail you can add in here, I always get a bit grumpy if I see, and I've seen a few of these, where people have just written doctors. Is that your target customer? What type of doctor? Where? How old are they? Are they male, mostly? Are they female? Where do they live? Where do they hang out? More information about them. And if you have time, early adopters. Who's going to be your very first customer or your very first user? Who is that person? What do they look like? Who are they? Where are they? Think about that. Hey, time's flying by. Now, tricky one. Unique value proposition. Your single message, your one line or maybe two lines. Why are you different? Why should someone care about what you're doing? Maybe not for now, but good thing to do is to go and look how big companies do it. You go and look at any well-known corporation who spend millions on their brand marketing. Go onto their website. What does it say about them? Often you want to focus on the benefits. So if you're, I don't know, doing something which helps people to lose weight, maybe you don't want to say this will help you lose 10 kilograms quickly. Maybe you want to say fit into that pair of jeans that you've always wanted to fit into. Whatever it is, right? Go to the next level of thinking. How is it actually going to benefit their lives? How is it going to change their existence? How are they going to feel once they've had that problem solved? Finish that thought. And on to the next one, which is the solution, the fun one. What are the top 3 things that your solution, whatever that is, if it's a product, if it's a service, whatever it is, what are the top 3 things that it's going to do to solve the problems that you put in box 1? Important, wherever possible, to be laser focused on this. And if you could strip it all back, if it just has to do one thing, what would that be? Out of those top 3 things you might be writing down, what's the top 1? What's the one thing that you have to do really well if you're going to be successful? Okay, got about 10 seconds left. So straight on to channels. So how are you going to spread the message and find the people who are going to buy your product or fund it or who are going to use it? Again, can be challenging. People often go really high level, like, oh, I'm just going to post on Facebook. I mean, that's fine. And maybe part of it. but maybe focusing on your early adopters. How are you going to go and get those first 10 people and get them using, or get them engaging and get them feeding back on your idea? You think about, I don't know, conferences, events, trade shows, and those which could be useful. Think about our academic health science networks, which play a really important role here. You could think about your personal network. Who do you know who could make an introduction to someone? You think about social media, marketing, word of mouth, yeah. Think creatively if you can. Okay, so now on to revenues. Just because we're a bit short on time, we might just split this across revenues and costs. So I know a lot of you will probably be at quite early stage. So let's think, how much is it going to cost to get you to build your MVP and test it? And where are you going to get that money from? So on this, thinking creatively about your commercial model, really important. Could you, for example, secure funding from a big pharmaceutical or medical device company who will pay for some of your development, which means you can then give it to the NHS for free or reduce price. That might be, maybe there's an option there. You get grant funding. What could you use a freemium model? If you're doing something maybe direct to patients where they can use certain aspects of the app for free, but then there's maybe a paid service. There's lots of interesting ways you can structure your revenue streams. Okay. Finish that thought. And I think, as I said, that's the engine room of your business. I'm sure you'd want to come back to that. But for now, we'll just start on and we'll do the last two boxes together, just so that we have some good time at the end for questions. So, key metrics. What are the things that you can measure which are telling you if you're going in the right direction? So if you're at a super early stage and you haven't even tested your idea yet, it's fine. But probably your metrics are going to be around, if I do this, then it's going to solve this problem, and you being able to quantify that. If you're a bit later stage, it may be that if I market like this and put this proposition to some customers, then they're going to, a decent percentage of them are going to convert to paying customers. That could be another type of metric. But so it's very dependent on what stage you're at. But what are the critical things that you can measure? And so you've got something there. You can think of anything. Often it's the hardest box. But what is your unfair advantage? what can't be easily copied or bought? Okay. So that was up. hopefully got the grey juices flowing a little bit. I think we'll pause there and see if anyone's got any questions, any reflections, any discussion points. Yeah, brilliant. I'm afraid I'm probably going to absolutely massacre your name. Oyin Dasola? Did I say that right? But please take yourself off mute and tell us who you are, what you do, and what your question is.
Hi, my name is Oyinda. I'm currently a project manager, so I work at BEH. I'm working within the CAMS division, so I'm doing a lot of work on pathways, clinical transformations, etc. So my question, because I went through all of the boxes with you, and I think my question was more the idea I have, it's just been something that's just sat in my head, doesn't really have any sort of structure or form. It's just that could probably work. Kind of stage. That's where we're at. So my question was more in terms of thinking about, the revenue, etc. I don't actually know. And just like some background, I have a master's in health psychology. So I think my thinking towards my idea has been quite academical in terms of, okay, I need to go do a literature review, I need to go see what research is out there, but not necessarily very practical. So what would your advice be on, having more practical approaches to these boxes? Because I think at the moment my approach is very, it's limited because I'm going at it based on what I know so far, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. It makes complete sense. And then and I think there'll be a lot of people in the call who are in quite a similar situation, I would think. I think that's good, right? Now we've started to take that idea out of your head. We start to put it onto the page, and we've suddenly seen, there's some holes here, right? So how are we going to fill those holes? Which I think is really the essence of your question. And there's no simple one answer to it. I'll give maybe some examples of stuff that I might try and do. One, like, what have other similar companies done? What is their structure? How did they go about it? If I go and find someone who's doing something roughly similar, and I go onto their website, like what can I learn about what their commercial model is? Are they trying to sell it to a hospital? Are they trying to sell it to individual clinicians or patients or whatever it might be? But what is their commercial model and what's their kind of revenue structure? Because you can probably learn a lot from that. The other thing, get out there and talk to people, right? I often say I'm the only idiot on LinkedIn with such a silly name, so feel free to drop me a message on LinkedIn, and we could have a virtual coffee and a chat about it. But reach out, start speaking to people, start to get ideas. As you speak to more commercially experienced people, then they will be able to connect the dots with you and help you start filling those in. And the other thing is, don't be disheartened, right? If you've got a big problem and you've got a solution which you don't think anyone else is doing or doing well, and you could think that if you solve that problem using that solution, it's going to have a big impact, then that right there is gold, right? All the other stuff you can figure out. You can always figure out a commercial model if you're solving a big problem for a lot of people. there's always going to be a way to make that successful. And then it's about trying different ways, and yeah, until you find one that sticks.
And occasionally, if I can just jump in, that we
Sure.
had, do you remember Deb Gompertz last year? So she actually was looking at just making a change within the system. Extraordinary. She was a GP who set up people, carers going into her homes, asking each patient, show me your meds, and what that did, and then she would get those carers to report back to the GP. And what they found is that people were taking their medications wrong, they were saving medications, they weren't taking them at all, and actually they even ended up diagnosing dementia on more people more effectively. So it was huge. I mean, it was very, very successful, and she's spoken about it across multiple sites across the UK. But it was very entrepreneurial. In fact, hers didn't particularly have a revenue stream, but it didn't stop it being successful or changing a lot of lives, making good diagnosis. But I think that particular bit, as Harry was talking about, is something that, as NHS workers, thinking about the revenue stream is something that we don't tend to look at very much. And it is something, again, that you will learn on the programme. So just as Harry says, you've identified where is an area where you maybe need to look at, but also, as Harry was saying, and it's really helpful to do this Lean Canvas multiple times, because each time you do it, you learn more about where your gaps are. So the Entrepreneur Programme will take you through a lot of those things, but just identifying that bit where you could make your application a little bit better is great. But of course, on the programme, it will go through how to apply for funding, how you would research an idea, how you would set up revenue, what type of revenue models you might want to think of, what your logo likes, how you come across on social media, what your branding looks like, because you actually all become your brand as well. And so, and how you put yourself across. So it doesn't, and you've got a fantastic offer there from Harry, so I'll definitely take him off of that to connect with him on LinkedIn, which is amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, really, really good points, Duncan. Hopefully that's helped you in there. Michael, should we come to you next? Let's say where you're from or what you do.
Sure. So I'm an ST4 psychiatry trainee, and I'm in Northwest London at the moment, and been a few of these now. So I was really helpful with the Lean Canvas, so thank you so much for that. My question was just about the kind of alternatives bit and trying to do the literature review of your competitors. So for my idea, there's a few papers about it, but I can't see any current competitors advertising the wares. But if they're kind of currently preparing it, how do I find out who's doing that, and how do I kind of write about it in this application if they haven't publicized it yet?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that I would do genuinely is get out and try and speak to people, right? Mm-hmm. And so if, I don't know if yours is a patient-facing thing that you're
so it'll be used by clinicians. It's using AI on kind of some healthcare data, but it would be kind of clinicians who'd be using it. So
reaching out to your network, reaching out to consultants, psychiatrists, whatever it might be. How are you addressing this problem? What are they doing currently? I think that's one thing which is super helpful, and definitely anything which is patient facing, actually getting out and speaking to patients, because obviously often their view of the world can be quite different from ours as clinicians, I think. But so that's one. Other thing, definitely expand. Like literature search is one thing, but get on to some of the things like Crunchbase is really good. Get on to some of the medtech news websites. Maybe get yourself along to some of the conferences and things which are going around. So HET is often really good, having a little bit of nosy. Nosy, or come say hello. We're Logic there as well as the Clinical Entrepreneur Programme, so we're all kicking around somewhere, I'm sure. But go and see, right? Go and see a whole bunch of similar-ish companies. Go and find out what's going on. Speak to the people who are there on the stands, just to try and get that kind of industry sector knowledge. And it could be tricky, right? If particularly in AI, I think there's a lot of people developing a lot of stuff behind closed doors, so it may not be that simple, but definitely whatever's in the public domain, and then trying to go out and speak to people in a similar field and also speak to your customers and users. Those would be my takeaways.
Really helpful.
People who are in that research area will often know as well. So contacting the author on those research papers is sometimes useful. You can't know everything, but it is embarrassing when people say there's no competitors on their form and someone just Googles it when they're looking at it and then 3 come up. So that's what you're avoiding in your application form. You're avoiding someone going, someone's already doing that. And your application form will be looked at 3 different type of people, someone in the commercial sector, someone medical, someone sort of maybe more patient facing, or we might, so you get 3 different types of experts who will be looking at your application form, if that helps to direct what you're saying.
That's very helpful. Yes, thank you.
Sorry, just to add as well, for us, it doesn't matter that someone else is doing it, as long as you've maybe different, or you know that someone else is doing it, because we have lots of lots of similar things being developed on the programme, and there are definite trends every year around similar ideas and innovations. It's just for us, it's understanding that you're aware that there are things that are similar on the market, or other people are doing it. As Tamsin said, we quite obviously, we've been around this programme for a long time, so when someone says, oh, there's no one else doing it, sometimes we know actually there is, just because we're in this space. But yet often the assessors will just Google it and say there's 6 or 7 people in this space, and that particularly relevant when it comes to things like education, like more conventional. Obviously you sound like you're doing something that's a bit different around data, but sorry, my video's not on, I didn't realise. More conventional things like well-being and sort of prevention and things like that, there tends to be quite a lot of, it's quite a saturated market. So yeah, that's just, we're putting up over the next couple of weeks the things that people do wrong on applications, so you can learn from what others are doing wrong on their applications that are not getting onto the programme, so hopefully you'll avoid those mistakes.
And actually, Polly, you make that because there have been people who've collaborated on the Clinical Entrepreneur Programme who have been in the same space, or helped each other out, but the collaborations have been particularly strong. Yeah, that's such a good point, Polly.
Yeah, no, all really good points, and definitely to emphasize that, like, don't be that person who says there's no one in the world doing this, and then if you just Google literally the idea, there's like 5 things with a whole bunch of paid ads all doing the same thing. Like, don't be that guy.
I'll do my best.
Sure. Okay, two more questions, and then I think we'll bring things to a close. Mohammed, we'll come to you.
Yeah, hi there. My name is Mo. I'm a consultant histopathologist at the North Bristol NHS Trust, and I've avoided talking openly about my idea, mainly fear that somebody else might copy it. And having done the lean canvas very quickly, I see that there's a gap in the unfair advantage, because I feel that if I don't protect my idea, then somebody could potentially copy it. But it sounds to me like from what you said and other people have said, that I shouldn't worry too much about it. I can actually talk openly about it with other people. Is that your stance, or is there something I can do to protect my intellectual property, as it were, which kind of to do with AI system in cancer diagnostic and development of a software?
Yeah, it's always a very good question, and it is a tricky one. Definitely be careful if you have something proprietary, right? If you've got a patent, which is a particular way of doing something, if you've got an algorithm, you need to protect that, right? You need to protect your IP. But I would say in almost every case that I've seen, there are still things that you can talk about. So, you know, it may not be, if we go to the lean canvas, it may not be your solution box that you want to talk about, but maybe you can start talking about the problem and how passionately people feel about it, and who is experiencing that problem, and who might be the people who would be potential customers who might engage with it, and start getting your learnings that way. In general, I think the more that you talk about the idea, the more feedback that you get, the better. So as a default position, I'd say, yeah, talk about it where possible. That doesn't mean, you know, posting on LinkedIn, here's my wonderful idea, and like everyone run off and go and do it. But certainly if you're successful in getting onto the program, speaking to your mentor, speaking to some of the other clinical entrepreneurs who may be in a similar space, I would definitely recommend. And then, yeah, just perhaps being slightly guarded about the proprietary bit, but then really falling in love with the problem, really understanding those other aspects, really talking about, I don't know, your go-to-market strategy and how you might start marketing it, whatever it might be, those other bits of the lean canvas. I'd highly recommend talking about those, whatever you feel comfortable doing.
And Mo,
Okay.
maybe, you know, if you're feeling nervous about it, in my experience, people are very interested, and who are medical, or the people who really take your IP are your hospital, right, or your university a lot of the time. But if you're feeling nervous about it, or you've been burnt before, then you can put confidential in the top of an email address, or so that you've got a record of that's clear. You can ask people to sign a non-disclosure agreement. So I was really nervous about doing that initially, and I did that thing of feeling like, oh, you know, I look like I don't trust people. And then what I didn't realize is that actually, when people are totally expected it, if no one's got anything to hide, they don't care about signing a non-disclosure agreement. So a non-disclosure agreement is just, it just outlines, like, I'm not going to steal your ideas, you're not going to steal my ideas, but we'll have an open discussion, a really open discussion about what's going to happen. And I think that I was scared to use non-disclosure agreements a lot initially. No one really stole my idea, actually, particularly on that. And there are people who are interested in that space, like you say. But then when I did start getting a bit more familiar with it and say, can I just have a really open discussion with you? And if you frame it like that, like, you know, I'd really love to tell you really what's going on. So if it's possible to write that down, and I know people have been burnt in the past, then I think that people aren't as worried about signing a non-disclosure as you'd think. And people understand it if they're in the innovation space, particularly. They would understand it. But I think even being clear on an email that something's confidential is quite helpful sometimes as well, particularly when you're going back to make sure that your IP is secure. Yeah, it can be a little bit tricky with your university or NHS trust sometimes, because it might be built into your contracts. So it is definitely worth looking at that. And you might have maybe had that idea before you joined that NHS trust, or when you had a break, and you might have a record of that happened then. So but I think that Harry is so right that discussion that you have really broadens your idea with it all. Polly, did you have something to add on that?
Yeah, just wanted to say, we don't take any of your IP as part of the programme. So that's all in our agreements, that it all belongs to you. We also do lots and lots of work around IP. So we have masterclasses on IP. We have group sessions with IP lawyers. We have one-to-one sessions as well. So alongside the pit stops and learning on the programme, there are lots of other mechanisms for you to tap into if you want to, around different things, regulation, IP, finance, those sorts of things, with people that can really help you with your idea.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
There's one final thought as well. And again, not saying that you give away anything proprietary, but most of what makes a idea, a business, a company successful isn't just that idea, right? It's the execution. It's all those other bits of your lean canvas which really take that idea, prove it, focus your attention on building the right parts of your business really effectively. That's what's absolutely critical. Like, who here has a MySpace account? They had an idea, Facebook came along, and well, that's gone now, right? Who uses Blockbuster Video, right? That wasn't blown out of the water because someone came along with a better video shop. No, it was a completely new technology, something completely different, and it was all about the market. It was all about how they could operate within that market. So yeah, be careful. Don't just go around blabbing to everyone, but also, yeah, advice is invaluable. Speaking to people is invaluable. Learning from mentors is absolutely invaluable. If you're too guarded for too long, then you're going to miss out on so much, I would say. Okay, final one. Is it Nigel?
Hello, thank you very much. Thanks for your time, everyone. Really useful. My initial question was IP, answered. My second one really is a medical device, of which you and I know there's many hoops need to cross to do that. And from a financial point of view, I wouldn't know of a clue, because from the initial innovation to get it into market and to use end user, realistically, it could be anything between 1 and 4 years from initial innovation to do that. So how would a maker start really from the financial implications, knowing that it's going to take that long time period from the initial innovation to the end user? I could be completely out from a finance.
Yeah, I think really good question. And definitely, if you are successful on the program, we've got some amazing mentors and other clinical entrepreneurs who've been really successful in the space, and they'll definitely give you better advice than I can. But I maybe say a couple of things. Like, one, at this stage, getting that early research done and getting that validation, can you see something in the literature which is showing a similar concept is successful? But having that theoretical evidence base behind what you're trying to do, I think is really important. Really then speaking to people and trying to understand what does that regulatory journey look like, and what are the various different levels of evidence that you're going to need to hit at each stage of it, that can then start informing a strategy long term, but then zero in on, okay, so if I'm going to get to this next stage of testing and regulation, then I'm going to need to do this sort of trial. This sort of trial I'm estimating is going to cost me 150k. So I'm going to therefore go after grant funding for a similar amount. So then you can start, you've got your roadmap laid out, and that's going to change, right? The distant things will change, but at least you have a direction of travel, and at each stage building more and more evidence behind it. Therefore, then will make it so much easier when you come to ask for that funding, because you can say, yeah, it's a really good idea. I know it's going to work, and this is why I know it's going to work. And then if it's a grant application or if it's private investment that you're seeking, you have a much more compelling case. So long-term view, but short-term, granular detail and focus, and would be my advice. Tamsin, you've probably got some good insight and thoughts on this as well.
I also did a medical device, Nigel, and also apps are often medical devices as well. So we've got a lot of the whole program will cover this a lot. Regulatory, what's expected, and nice to have as well. Don't use any of your own money if you possibly can. We've definitely had entrepreneurs doing that and still paying it back. So there's a lovely pipeline. So as well as a lot of funding advice, you don't need to use your own money. You can get commercial partners who will partner with you, or you can raise money that you don't have to pay back, or money that you do have to pay back, depending on which one you go for. And there's some very nice associations with the programme around getting funding. So particularly the SBRI, although we have a lot of people successful in certain other funding programmes such as Innovate or a lot of the NIHR grants. And you can put that within that. You would put down what you were doing within that. So there's a couple of ways around it. You're absolutely right. It's a long, terrible process, not called the Valley of Death for nothing. And we've also got, as Harry said, mentors in this space are insane. They're so good, and they've done it multiple times. So you need to not be alone. You need to have a team around you. You probably need a good amount of funding. I actually did a lot on a shoestring, a lot of charity funded work initially, because I couldn't get it to a point where someone was interested until I'd done little tiny bits of work. And as Harry said, started off with little tiny bits of manageable research initially, you know, with just a few patients or a few, and starting off even with surveys about what people wanted or needed or whatever. So it can all be covered. There's a lot of people who are experienced in this space, and a lot of the apps will end up needing to be medical devices as well. Not necessarily, but some of them will, if they've got measuring functions and things. The other thing is that it's also worth connecting with the Medical Health Regulation Authority to ask their advice early on.
I think we're probably 20 minutes over, so I think we should probably draw it to a close. So really hope that's been useful. And yeah, I guess I'll thank everyone for the time. Polly, I don't know if you've got any final words.
Just to say, we've got another session on the 20th of September on pitching. As part of the application, you have to do a 1-minute pitch. So that will just teach you some skills and techniques to enable you to do a great pitch.
And thank you for turning up tonight. Great to see you. Thanks for turning on your camera, the people who turned on the camera. Great to have all of you there. Thanks for asking the questions. Thanks for introducing yourself in the chat. Great to see you all. Good luck.
Thanks, everybody.